Coming up on this Monday edition of Newsline at Noon, ahead of a summit with her Vietnamese counterpart in Hanoi later today, President Park Geun-hye calls for the two nations to cooperate on nuclear plant construction. We have details on the president's sales diplomacy in Vietnam. South Korea and the U.S. complete a joint deterrence plan against North Korea's nuclear threats. The allies will officially sign off on the plan at next month's Security Consultative Meeting. Plus, counting down to the Senate's decision on a military strike in Syria, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says the Assad regime's use of chemical weapons on civilians crossed a global red line. President Assad, on the other hand, denies ordering a chemical weapons attack. These stories and more on Newsline at Noon.
Where's the best place for bibimbap?
Les Jeux Olympiques d'hiver se dérouleront-ils à Pyeongchang?
هل أنتم حقاً سابع أكبر مصدر في العالم؟
この歌手は誰ですか？你好，最近哪部电视剧的人气最旺？
Korea is attracting interest from around the world. The more you know, the more you want to know. Dynamic Korea.
Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline at Noon. I'm Choi Yusan here in Seoul.
Very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. Let's start this lunchtime with President Park Geun-hye's state visit to Vietnam this week. The president is scheduled to hold a summit with her Vietnamese counterpart in about half an hour's time. But on Sunday, she met with Korean and Vietnamese businessmen in Hanoi.
As part of her sales diplomacy, she stressed the need for better cooperation in areas of nuclear plant construction, infrastructure projects, and free trade. Our presidential correspondent Oh Jin-ju sent us this report.
President Park has emphasized the importance of the newly emerging economic bloc, which is the so-called VIP, V standing for Vietnam, I for Indonesia, and P for the Philippines. During a dinner with Korean and Vietnamese businessmen on Sunday, President Park said she chose Vietnam as the first country among the ASEAN member nations for her overseas trip due to her firm belief in the future the two countries will build. President Park also stressed Korea and Vietnam should expand cooperation to higher value-added sectors in line with economic development in both countries. Nuclear power plant construction was one of them.
원전 건설 협력이 구체화되면 베트남 경제의 안정적 성장에 크게 기여할 뿐만 아니라 양국 간 경제 협력의 새로운 지평을 열게 될 것입니다.
Earlier in the day, President Park attended a fashion show of the two countries' traditional attire, Korea's hanbok and Vietnam's áo dài. She herself wore a hanbok with a cream-colored top and a lemon-colored dress, and expressed her hopes for the two nations to cooperate in harmony, just as the two traditional costumes blend together.
베트남의 아름다운 아오자이와 또 한국의 고운 한복이 이렇게 한 자리에서 양국의 문화를 나눌 수 있는 소중한 기회를 갖게 돼서 매우 기쁘게 생각합니다.
On Monday, President Park is scheduled to hold bilateral talks with Vietnamese President Truong Tan Sang, after which the two leaders are expected to adopt a joint statement for joint prosperity. As the key focus of President Park's Vietnam trip is her sales diplomacy, Senior Presidential Secretary for Foreign Affairs Chu Cheol-gi explained she will call on the Vietnamese government to support Korean companies in winning bids for nuclear power plant construction and major national infrastructure projects. She's also expected to ask Vietnam to quickly push ahead with free trade agreement negotiations and improving the business environment for investment. Oh Jin-ju, Arirang News, Hanoi.
Military authorities here in South Korea and the United States have completed their joint deterrence strategy against North Korean nuclear threats. Citing an official in Seoul, Yonhap News Agency reports the two allies have been working on the strategy for the past 10 months and will sign the document at their next Security Consultative Meeting early next month. The strategy document reportedly includes how the two countries would react politically, diplomatically, and militarily in the event that North Korea launches a nuclear attack. South Korea and the United States agreed to push the deadline for the strategy forward by a year to this year after they estimated that North Korea's nuclear threat has become a real threat compared to a few years ago when it was estimated to be a potential threat.
The US military is developing a new defense system that could hit targets anywhere in the world in less than 1 hour and is more accurate than a ballistic missile. It also has the potential to deter ballistic missiles from North Korea and China. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
The U.S. is developing a new state-of-the-art weapons system that could potentially reach targets anywhere around the world in less than an hour. It could also be used as a deterrent against China or North Korea. A report released by the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace in Washington, D.C. earlier this month suggests the system would enable the U.S. to target North Korean missiles before takeoff. The U.S. military has been researching and testing the conventional prompt global strike system for over a decade. The Defense Department added the system to its roster in 2003, and the government allocated $174.8 million to its development in 2012. The Carnegie report says the system has the potential to deploy non-nuclear weapons to outer space. The missiles that are part of the system are launched into space and glide back to Earth in just a matter of minutes or hours. They have the potential to travel 20 times the speed of sound. The program appears to be in the final stages of development. The Pentagon is currently testing the missile system and looking at ways to use it in satellite defense and counterterrorism. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
The two Koreas will convene their second joint committee for the management of the Kaesong Industrial Complex on Tuesday as they look to nail down a date for reopening the factory zone. The meeting comes just days after the North restored a military hotline near the West Sea, one of the preconditions demanded by the South for the resumption of operations, which stalled 5 months ago amid heightened inter-Korean tensions. The hotline is the only communication channel between the two Koreas that could guarantee the safety of South Koreans working at the complex. Since last week, an average of 600 to 700 South Korean businessmen each day have visited their Kaesong factories to prepare for the resumption of operations. Many are hoping the joint business park can reopen before Korea's traditional Thanksgiving holiday Chuseok next week.
As part of the government's efforts to increase the country's employment rate to 70% from just over 60% now, the Labor Ministry is working on a plan to create more part-time jobs, guaranteeing the same benefits allowed to a full-time employee. Yoo Ri-an reports.
Starting next year, more employees may be able to work shorter working hours, but still receive the same benefits afforded to full-time employees. 2 part-time workers would split the salary of 1 full-time worker. More importantly, they will also be covered by the same benefits. The plan is a brainchild of the Ministry of Employment and Labor and is part of the ministry's effort to achieve a 70% employment rate by 2017 and create 9,000 part-time positions. The ministry is expected to devise a bill outlining the plan by the end of the year. If implemented, the new system would first be adopted by the central and local governments for public servants. Teachers, nutritionists, and accountants from public and private schools would be next in line to benefit from the new work system. The ministry will also try to entice companies in the private sector to adopt the system as well by providing social insurance fee and tax deductions.
Companies have said that, realistically, it is difficult to decide how to employ a part-time worker and give them raises as well as compensation. So we'll come up with a good model that they can use.
The government is also seeking to create measures to aid the baby boomer generation, those born between 1955 and 1963, who are now nearing retirement age. Yoo Ri-an, Arirang News.
The next wave of young college graduates here in Korea is attempting to break into the nation's competitive job market. Companies have been trying to ease the burden on these new job seekers by putting less emphasis on test scores and the so-called specifications. Our Kim Hyun-ji shows us what job recruiters are doing to diversify their workforce.
It's the start of another long meeting for this company's human resources team as they carefully pour through another stack of job applications. But this time, they are taking a different recruiting approach by solely focusing on an online essay. The applicant's age, grades, and school are never revealed during the blind hiring process, which aims to reduce discrimination in the job market.
We've begun adopting a new approach in order to recruit individuals with more practical skills and talents. After some discussion, we've introduced this essay screening process.
Government agencies have been mandated to adopt similar hiring standards, with the trend also catching on among Korea's largest conglomerates. Experts say it's an attempt to move away from the nation's obsession with a spec culture that pushes workers to pump up their resumes with certificates, licenses, and high English proficiency test scores. Many job seekers fear that without an abundance of these credentials, they will never even make the first cut for an interview. Here at this job fair organized by a local university, corporate recruiters reassure young applicants that things have changed, but many are skeptical.
Sometimes I have my doubts that the system is run fairly. They say the evaluation process is anonymous and that there are blind interviews, but who knows? In reality, they could be looking at everything.
Since there are no standards, I think it's quite possible that people are taking part in unfair practices despite what they say.
It's important that companies are recognizing the need for a diverse pool of applicants. But change will likely come slowly as expectations continue to climb amid a shrinking number of highly sought-after jobs. Kim Hyun-ji, Arirang News.
A recent report from the Korea Consumer Agency shows the amount of money spent on food and education represents the highest economic burden on households nationwide. The survey results also show a growing number of Koreans feel they're falling out of the middle class amid the sluggish economy. Our Paul Lee reports.
The Korea Consumer Agency surveyed some 1,500 men and women across the country on their spending habits over the past year. Respondents were asked what particular expenses they felt were the greatest economic burdens in their lives. More than a quarter of the people surveyed said that food costs amounted to their biggest annual expenditure. Education was second on the list, followed by housing and medical spending. Despite the high costs, Koreans placed a high importance on spending related to their diet and education. A majority of the respondents also said they felt a heavy economic burden from imported agricultural, livestock, and marine products. A further investigation by the state agency found consumer satisfaction to be low for marriage, funeral arrangements, clothing, and other expenses, as they felt the level of service didn't justify the high prices. Experts say it's a result of Korean households feeling that their overall spending power has weakened amid the sluggish economy. Economic sentiment among Koreans aged 20 years and older has been steadily declining. The percentage of survey respondents who perceive themselves as being in the lower income bracket rose to over a third this year, up from less than 18% back in 2012. Meanwhile, only about 60% now consider themselves in the middle class, compared to 80% some 10 years ago. The National Consumer Agency says the results of their survey show a need for additional and more specific measures to address the growing voice of burdened consumers. Paul Yi, Arirang News. For your fill of Korean and international news, join Chae Yu-sun and Mark Broom every weekday at lunchtime. Newsline at Noon.
Plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring bills.
U.S. President Barack Obama's hard sell to convince a skeptical Congress to back his plans to attack Syria is struggling to gain traction. However, key Arab nations have agreed that the Assad regime crossed a global red line for its alleged chemical weapons attack last month that killed hundreds of civilians. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
The Obama administration is facing an uphill battle in its attempt to convince members of Congress to approve military action against Syria. In an attempt to boost support, the Obama administration released graphic video footage to senators and American media outlets over the weekend, showing victims of the alleged chemical attack. But a congressional survey carried out by the Washington Post shows that a majority of House members were leaning against authorizing the use of U.S. military force in the conflict-torn country.
I think lobbing a few Tomahawk missiles will not restore our credibility overseas. It's kind of a face-saving measure for the president after he drew the red line. And that's what I'm very concerned about, is that once we, as my colleague from California mentioned, once we're in, we're in. And once we hit, this is an act of war.
Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry spoke in Paris Sunday to bolster support for military intervention after meeting with key Arab foreign ministers. Kerry said the Arab countries agreed the use of chemical weapons by the Bashar al-Assad regime crossed an international global red line.
It is clear that if we don't take action, the message to Hezbollah, Iran, Assad will be that nobody cares that you broke this nearly 100-year-old standard, and you're using weapons that have been banned by 189 nations.
Syrian President Assad continues to deny all the allegations, saying the evidence produced by Obama is not conclusive and can be refuted. Assad also warned Syria would retaliate if a strike was made by an external force. Ahead of Wednesday's crucial test vote in the Senate, Obama is expected to give interviews to 6 news networks on the topic and present a grand speech on Syria. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
And staying with Syria, U.S. Senator Rand Paul refuted Secretary of State John Kerry's justifications for military action against Syria on Fox News on Sunday. The junior senator for Kentucky said that a surgical strike by the United States would not serve as an effective tool for deterrence and could actually worsen the situation in Syria. Paul said the worst-case scenario would be that the regime's stockpiles of chemical weapons would fall into the wrong hands once they were removed from Syria to neighboring regions controlled by the terrorist group Hezbollah. With regard to North Korea, Paul said cases involving Syria and North Korea are 2 completely separate situations and cannot be lumped together, in that the North Koreans already know there would be a retaliation against them if gas or conventional weapons were used on U.S. troops. A stalwart of former dictator Hosni Mubarak has been chosen to chair the committee in charge of amending a constitution passed through by deposed Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi. Amr Moussa, who was foreign minister for a decade under Mubarak, won the most votes when the group met for the first time on Sunday. Only 2 Islamists are on the panel, and neither of them are from Morsi's Muslim Brotherhood, which is the target of an ongoing security crackdown. The interim government has tasked the panel to complete its work within 60 days. The constitution will then be put to a public vote and provide the base for new elections and a return to civilian rule early next year.
The U.S. National Security Agency is reportedly capable of hacking into major smartphones by leading manufacturers, including Apple's iPhone and BlackBerry. Quoting internal NSA documents, German news magazine Der Spiegel reports the agency, in cooperation with Britain's government communications headquarters, can tap into private information held on smartphones, such as contact lists and outgoing calls. However, the information the magazine had did not indicate whether the hacking technique was used to carry out mass public surveillance. The magazine didn't specify how it got its hands on the document, but AP reports that one of the contributing writers of the story is an American filmmaker in close contact with U.S. intelligence leaker Edward Snowden. It might seem like something out of a sci-fi movie, but German automaker Daimler AG says it will have a self-driving car on the road by 2020. The company's head of development, Thomas Weber, says Daimler will be the first to launch autonomous functions in production vehicles. Daimler faces tough competition from Japan's Nissan, which has also announced its intention to get a completely computer-guided car onto the market by the end of the decade. The technology is expected to feature heavily at this week's Frankfurt International Motor Show, but experts say regular drivers will still have to wait at least another 10 years before they can try a self-driving car for themselves.
Korea's best-known gay couple, film director Kim Jo-kwang-soo and his long-term partner Kim Sung-hwan finally tied the knot over the weekend. The 2-hour ceremony took place Saturday evening next to the Cheonggae Stream in downtown Seoul and was open to the public, with hundreds of people offering congratulations and support. Gay rights advocates say it signals the beginning of a new discussion about homosexuals in Korean society. 48-year-old Kim and his 29-year-old partner plan to officially register the marriage soon. If the registry is denied, the couple say they will take their case to the Constitutional Court. Currently, same-sex marriage is legal in just 14 countries around the world, including the Netherlands, France and New Zealand, but gay marriage is not legally recognized in Korea. The ancient sport of wrestling has rebounded to regain its spot in the 2020 and 2024 Summer Olympics. At an IOC session in Buenos Aires on Sunday, wrestling easily defeated bids from baseball, softball and squash after revamping itself over the last 6 months. Song Ji-son reports.
Wrestling is back in the Olympics after 7 months in limbo, and its advocates are even more determined to keep it there for centuries to come. Wrestling won the approval of the IOC on Sunday as an additional sport for the 2020 and 2024 Olympic Games, receiving 49 votes to win in the first round of secret balloting. Baseball and softball garnered a combined 24 votes, and squash followed at 22. The result capped a frantic 6-month campaign by the sport's governing body to preserve its Olympic status after the IOC Executive Board cut it from the list of core sports in February. With wrestling's return, no new sports have been added to the 2020 Games.
I think the session today was clear that the Executive Board made a mistake in getting rid of wrestling, and so they corrected that mistake. Now we're back to where we were before the process started, with no new sports, and I think the new president will have to solve that problem.
The goal for wrestling now is to regain its place on the list of 25 core sports. As for baseball and softball, the absence of Major League Baseball players from the Olympics and baseball's refusal to comply with all of the World Anti-Doping Agency rules are commonly cited as why the sport has been out of the Olympics since 2008. The governing bodies for baseball and softball have vowed to make another pitch to be readmitted to the Olympics in the future. Song Ji-son, Arirang News.
And congratulations to all the wrestlers out there who might have the chance to go to the 2020 Olympics in 8 or 7 years' time, rather. Now let's get a check on the weather now with our weathercaster Lee Ji-yeon, who's standing by at our weather center. Good afternoon to you, Ji-yeon.
Well, hello there, guys. Now, with the big temperature gaps between night and day, a lot of people are suffering from colds, including me.
Yes, me too. I've got a bit of a sore throat, runny nose, that kind of thing. And we've talked a little bit about the importance of boosting our immune systems, like getting a good night's sleep.
Very important. And also eating well and taking multivitamins are also really good steps to take care of your health. And Ji-yeon, well, do you have any other tips you can share with us?
Well, there is even easier way to avoid getting sick by making sure you're washing hands with soap. Keeping your hands clean with soap will stop spreading of germs, and it's suggested washing hands at least 8 times a day. Now, speaking of staying healthy, exercise is one of the ways, right? And today should be a great day to go out for a walk or jog to get that exercise, as temperatures are approaching mid to upper 20s in most regions with nice breeze all day long. Now, the haze from this morning is burning up towards the afternoon, but other than that, we are looking at mostly to partly clear skies with few passing clouds. But other than that, it's really nice to be outdoors, so you guys go out and take advantage of it. Now, tomorrow's weather should be a pleasant one as well. Expect similar weather pattern as today for most regions. Well, we do have frequent rain showers in the forecast this week. It will rain nationwide on Wednesday and Friday and Saturday. Another round of autumn rain is in the store for other places. With that, it's time to take a look at our temperature. Now, daytime highs in Seoul will rise to 26 degrees Celsius, that's 79 degrees in Fahrenheit, and afternoon highs in Daegu and Gwangju, Busan will all get up into high 20s. Now, for other regions, Jeju and Daejeon and Dokdo will all stay in the 20s, while Mount Kumgang will be in the cooler side at 16. Now that's all I have for you today. Hope you have a great rest of the day, and back to Mark and Yusan in the studio.
Well, thank you very much for the weather report there, Jian, and those are the stories we're following at this hour.
Mark and I will be back tomorrow for up-to-the-minute news coverage here on Newsline at Noon.